You're watching Public Comment every Thursdays at 8 a.m. The live stream. Detroit is different and Bridge Detroit. Local politics of Detroit. All right, welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of Public Comment. Public Comment is a weekly show where we're talking about municipal politics of Detroit, right? So a lot of stuff from city council, but today we're talking about one of the most precious gems of the city of Detroit. We're talking about the Rock, as I call it, but everybody else knows it as Belle Isle. And here with me that wrote eloquently in the notebook every week that is delivered through Bridge Detroit, a partner of Detroit is Different, and getting you some information. Malachi Barrett, how are you doing today?
Good. I'm doing well. I've never heard anybody call it the Rock before. I've heard gem, maybe some other things. Never Rock though. So
yes. The Rock is more like of the strip days. It's like, we going to the Rock. That was the whole concept. And then actually during that era, I'm aging myself. It's like you go to the River Rock on days where you have money. You go to the Rock on days where money is low. But that is the Belle Isle experience of, I'd say, the 90s, early 2000s era. Throwback jerseys and all of that jazz. You can hear the Nelly. Just imagine it in your mind. The ludicrous, right? And speaking of that, somebody that is from the Georgia state that joins us, that is here now in Detroit, talking about what you need to know politically, lobbying for you, advocating for you. Thomaesa Bailey, we own everything. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to talk about Belle Isle. I hate that I missed the strip days. I wish I could have been here. I know Belle Isle is a gem. I've never lived in a city that had its own island before. I mean, Detroit is just so unique in that way. And so I'm just really excited for this conversation.
Definitely. And many people, I would say it's a couple questions I always ask from Detroit is Different. And the question I always ask people that aren't born in Detroit is, if you had an alien and that alien came to Earth, where would you take them? Belle Isle is the number one response. So people want aliens on. I'm just messing with
you. It's the first place I bring visitors, usually when they come to visit me in Detroit.
See?
So.
My very first day in Detroit, I went to Belle Isle. I got off the airplane, got in the car, and went to Belle Isle. They were like, "Oh, we got to show you the island." So, yeah.
See, there you go. E.T. gets the same experience. That's the Detroit way. That is the Detroit way, right? So with that being said, let's see. Oh, man, bouncing through. Okay. Belle Isle is Detroit's crown jewel, beloved park shaped by the legacy of Black families, community gatherings, and nature's embrace. 5.4 million annual visitors. It's a vital public space, yet increasingly navigated by the car, right? So a lot of the changes that are proposed is to make, we're hearing this about a lot of stuff, making things more walkable. Now, some spaces, I don't know about that walkability, but that is a space that we definitely know is the car destination. Even the whole concept of the strip was basically having a car and parking. So making a town square type style for Belle Isle, that is the vision. And the CEO of the Conservancy, Megan Elliott, says everyone drives to the island. We want to create some opportunities to actually make space more usable and accessible. So you can kind of see in the picture up here, New Public Square aims to link the aquarium, Conservancy, beach, sports fields by foot and bike, right? So usually most of my life, that area where you think like it's a lot of deers over there because like deer start coming out and everything, making it a little bit more usable. So still staying friendly to nature, but where people can kind of travel through the island and not feel as though they have to get in their car. A bike lane, which kind of makes sense. That's one of the places where bike lanes make the most sense, both ways, so people can travel not just in one direction kind of through. You can kind of get a little bit more passing through two lanes, right? And 2.1 million mobility project. So that's the bike lane resurfacing and designing just this connection in the destination, making it more accessible for everybody throughout the island. You were there for this city council presentation that I believe is coming up every year, as Belle Isle is still part of Detroit, but managed, I guess, run through the state or leased through the state, and the Conservancy does a whole lot to pour into it. What was the tone? What was happening at City Council during this presentation, Malachi?
Yeah, so every year the DNR comes down. Well, not just the DNR. Let me break this down a little bit. So Belle Isle's operated through a couple of partnerships with different state organizations. The city owns the park still, which I think is really important for people to understand. Like, we talk a lot about, like, oh, we sold off Belle Isle, we got rid of it. City owns it. It leases it on a 30-year lease that was that took effect in 2014 and won't expire until 2044. We were doing our napkin math here to make sure that was right before the show. So it is under management of the State Department of Natural Resources. All of the roads and the bridges and, you know, the kind of physical infrastructure is managed by the Department of Transportation at the state. The state police act as the law enforcement on the island, and the Belle Isle Conservancy, the nonprofit organization, operates the aquarium and the conservatory specifically. So there's a lot of different stakeholders who have a say over what happens on the island. And once a year, they come down to City Council and they update them on basically what they have done in the previous year and what is ahead. And as part of that, the headline that I pulled out was they're going to build a public square on the island. Probably they have kind of a map that we had up there with a general kind of area trying to connect the aquarium and the conservatory. There's a acknowledgement from Megan Elliott that people drive out there, they go to one destination, they get out of their car, they get back in their car, and they go home. Or maybe they take a drive around the island to see everything. But there's not a lot of like walking in between destinations, even though the beach is really not that far away from the aquarium or some of these other attractions, not far from the yacht club, not far from the golf course. But it doesn't feel very walkable out there, and people don't have this mental map, she said, that allows them to kind of see that as being possible. And we can talk about a couple of reasons for that, but the DNR has been really focused in the last couple of years on improving walkability and bikeability on the island, reducing that car dependency. There's a lot of like really vocal groups that say we should not have cars on the island at all, which is not probably going to happen. The DNR has been pretty resistant, or I guess MDOT as well. The state is not interested really in doing that. There's two ways to get there. You can either bike across the bridge or you can drive across the bridge. There's been discussion of creating some water taxis and building up some docks on the island so that you could get there from different parts of the riverfront. But right now, I mean, it is a very car-centric island, which is interesting because it is a really unique natural resource. I learned that well, I'm not going to get into the details because I'm going to get the details wrong. But basically, the forest on Belle Isle, the wetlands or flatlands forest, is one of a handful of those kinds of environments that exist around the country. So there's a lot of really unique natural resources there. There's bald eagles on the island. There's canals you can kayak through. There's all this great outdoor stuff, but you have to get there on four wheels. So this Belle Isle Commons concept is in pretty early stages. They want it to be guided by public feedback, and it will probably be a couple of years before we really see the end of it. But I think generally there needs to be something done to encourage people to walk around a little bit more. There's a couple. I mean, we can talk about reasons why maybe people don't walk around, but I also just want to flag quickly before handing it off. There's a lot of frustration from some of the folks who feel like the island is too car dependent. There's a lot of frustration on the big concrete pad that was put in for the Grand Prix, right? And now it is used by
roller skaters
sometimes, like myself, and DPD as well does driving training out there. So sometimes you'll go out and you'll see them going through these courses and doing, complicated maneuvers and not burning out necessarily, but doing some Tom Cruise stuff. And, as we add more concrete to the island, there's a lot of concerns about the stormwater impacts of that and the flooding impacts of that. And there was a massive flood in 2019 that destroyed a lot of the trees in the flatland forest. And part of the reason was taking out, putting in these kind of bridges that connected the waterways but also people are worried about the amount of concrete we have on there that, moves water around. So I'm interested in that aspect of it as well. How is this going to be done in a way that doesn't contribute to flooding issues on the island? Because one reason I'm not walking around Belle Isle that much is it gets pretty soggy and wet in some of those intermediary, kind of plains, like in between the streets.
Yep.
So I don't know. There's a lot of like things to look at, I think, when it comes to this.
Yes. So I know with this, Thomaesa, you have understandings in government structures a little bit. The role already just kind of state and city. You've looked at it just how the city of Detroit is chartered. Can you just break down a little bit more of this relationship between state and city? Because it definitely sometimes feels like, not to quote Tommy Walker, a lot of Detroit versus everybody. Can you make it kind of make sense? Because the city is chartered through the state, and then obviously the state has a relationship with the federal government. A county exists here, and you also have a conservancy. But just break the relationship down a little bit.
Yeah, I can do that. So it's all about federalism. It's all about the levels of government that we have. So, from my understanding, Belle Isle was a city asset. It's still owned by the city, but it used to be operated by the city as well. But as the city of Detroit had some financial difficulties, that responsibility was discharged, and now the state is now responsible for it. And cities are creatures of the state, so there's a possibility for state actors to come in and take charge over things that cities used to have control over. So that's kind of what it seems like is happening here. As Malachi was mentioning, you have the state police who do the law enforcement. You have the MDOT who manages the roads and things of that nature. And then you also have the Department of Natural Resources, which is another state agency that manages the natural resources and the grounds of the area. And so those are state actors who are coming in and doing their activities on a city-owned asset. So it's really just separation of powers. Whereas the city used to have those responsibilities, now those responsibilities have been discharged to the state. So that is sort of kind of how that's working. And of course, as you mentioned, Khary, a lot of the federal monies that go into preserving natural resources will come down to the state, and then those resources will be used to maintain Belle Isle, the streets, the natural resources, things of that nature. So it's a lot of hands kind of all in the pot together. The city owns it, but the state manages it. Like, what does it all look like? But if you sort of parse all that out, you can kind of see that the land itself, Belle Isle, the island, belongs to the city, right? But then if you talk about the maintenance and the activities and the upkeep, then that belongs to the state.
All right. So when things happen like this, and then you also have a conservancy, and there are other conservancies, like shout out to Chandler Park Conservancy for welcoming the collard green cook-off. And also soon we'll be doing something probably with Belle Isle too. But not too much to share as of now. With that being said, conservancies serve as like public interest groups of people that step up and really just want to get involved and pour their own gathering of funding and benefits, and then end up having these relationships. Can you share, like, as a person from We Own Everything, how citizens get involved to create spaces for conservancies, because there are conservancies for other parks and acts like that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I haven't really got into conservancies in that way, but I do know that they serve a very important purpose, and they're a nonprofit, right? So their whole mission is a service-based mission to see an asset, to see something that kind of needs to be managed, that needs people to sort of get involved with that, and then they create entities such as the Belle Isle Conservancy to manage those assets. And it's I don't know exactly how people would get involved with that. But I'm sure it's just a matter of being in contact with them and volunteering and things of that nature. And if you have the space and the organizational capacity to be able to create a conservancy about a cause that you care about, then there are ways to be able to get into that. But I do probably need to do a little bit more research on conservancies, because they are nonprofits. They're nonprofits who have a very specific mandate to manage and control certain assets. And so I think that, that's an important part of this conversation as well.
Okay. All right. So that information is coming between that collaboration of We Own Everything and Detroit is Different, so we can understand all these different entities and actors in the mix. And as we talk about entities and actors, one of the things really upraised in this discussion from my council member, Angela Whitfield Calloway, was talking about couple things with the fountain repairs and also the zoo, right? So just the discussion about in that whole management of upkeep, what happens with ownership. It was upraised that both assets are just, well, one asset, the fountain, it's just tough to manage right now, so parts of it will not necessarily be.
They're going to turn it off until 2027 for a big reconstruction project. They found that the foundation of the fountain was basically crumbling, so they're going to have to replace the whole thing, and some of the marble elements they're going to cut off and replace as well.
And even you speaking up this is something I've known about for years, because my history, this Malachi may not even know this one, but when I met Catherine Kelly, kind of how we met, it was at the Michigan Citizen. So there were early stories even back then in the archives of the Michigan Citizen, I guess early to today, that go back. I mean, the Michigan Citizen, we're talking about 2012, about what's happening with the fountain and keeping that up. That is one of the engineering and architectural marvels of the world itself. So I think you're bringing in, I interviewed him not that long ago, but you're bringing in people like Carlos Nielbach and people that have like understandings of historic engineering and functions and how all of that works, also with, dealing back with like the water pressure and what's happening with the ground and things like that. I remember the story because I found it very interesting then, and we've seen it on and off. And the other point that was brought up was the zoo, the Belle Isle Zoo. Shout out to Angela Lugo Thomas and her family. Her grandmother was the visionary for the Belle Isle Zoo, one of those lead appointees for Coleman Young at the time. You can look in the archives of, I want to say, like a HBO series, like Hidden Histories, that talks specifically about what the Belle Isle Zoo was, what it meant to the city, and how that came about, but also just the struggles of how do you keep that asset going as things are challenged. Angela can tell so many stories about it. Angela is, I think for most people, they probably know her through Keep Growing Detroit. I know her because she's a friend of Detroit is Different and one of the biggest supporters of Detroit is Different. And I also found it very interesting hearing that story. But yeah, zoo upkeep is zoo upkeep ain't cheap. It ain't easy. I think that's why during the pandemic, everybody was watching that Tiger King documentary. Like, yo, what the hell is going on with this, right? So yeah, to keep that safe for children, and then what animals you'll have in there, and how that footprint works, and what's happening with it. Its focus being so African centered at one point in time was something that I do think Detroiters would love, but it's back to like the resources and the capacity to execute something like that.
Who's going to do it, right? I mean, who would take that on? The Detroit Zoological Society, this was a big debate and a huge public conversation, years and years ago. Decided to put their zoo out in Royal Oak instead of in the city, and they're not interested in having a zoo on Belle Isle. I haven't heard any particular group step up and say that they want to do that. There's some interactive kind of animal exhibits at the nature center that the DNR operates. I think things like beavers and like really, I don't know,
man, the aquarium, but
and the aquarium obviously is, a historic, I think it's the oldest operating aquarium in the country. I've heard it described that way. So, that's a huge resource too. I think, Whitfield Callaway mourning the zoo makes sense. But I just don't understand kind of if there's any momentum around putting something in there. Those buildings are all pretty beat up, and there's lots of photos online of the graffiti and the deterioration, and they're unsafe now even for people to go back there. So the DNR for the last couple of years has been building toward turning that area into natural habitats and trails that connect to the flatlands. And I think that's something that they had found that the public wanted as well. But it is kind of a shame that we no longer have a zoo there, and it would be great for kids to have something like that. I mean, I get where she's coming from.
We all do. Thomaesa?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I definitely agree with Member Calloway. I think that it would be great for us to have a zoo, but when I was working in her office, we did have the opportunity to take some seniors to the zoo in Royal Oak, and I was talking to some of the zoo officials about just zoo maintenance and how they have to deal with the animals and how you have to transport the animals and things of that nature. And so the idea of transporting, these exotic animals to Belle Isle, you have to clean up everything that is there now. You have to sort of make sure that there's, cages and habitats and things of that nature. I mean, that would be an enormous undertaking. But it's something that would cost a lot of money. It's something that would need a lot of funding. You have to have special protocols for certain animals. And the way that zoos procure animals is like a whole, different process within itself. So that is it's a lot to consider. And then also going back to the fountain, this is another interesting question that I have about the land. So if the city owns the land that Belle Isle, is created from, who owns the assets? Do you own are these fixtures to the land that go with the land? This is me putting on my lawyer hat, my property class hat. So the land is owned by the city, but who are the assets owned by? Are they also owned by the city because they are affixed to the land, or are they the responsibility of the state because the state is responsible for the maintenance of the assets? So that is something that needs to be clear when we're talking about, well, the city owns the land, but does the city own the fountain?
Well, you and your former boss are kind of aligned on that, because that was the question she had yesterday as well. When it came to, I mean, she was talking about, swapping out marble in the statues. And she was like, well, if you're going to take the marble away, that's the city owns that, correct? And so shouldn't we have a say in where it ends up or what is done with it, And she asked the law department to weigh on this. But basically, my understanding from what, the conversation at the table was yesterday is that the city does own all of those assets. Whether that means they have a right to say, you can't rebuild something or you have to do this a certain way because this is our asset. I think that's more what the law department is looking into. But yeah, that's an important thing to remember too. The city does technically own those zoo structures. Part of the problem, obviously, was that the city didn't have the resources to maintain the zoo structures in the first place. But
I mean, this is the elephant in the room for a lot of the challenges in the city of the yeah, exactly. There you go. It's like a pun. I don't have the drums, but it's real. So like always the biggest question will be, the city has a capacity for about 2 million people, right? And give or take, let's say it's somewhere between 600 and 700,000 people here, right? That's, and not to mention a lot of the people that work in the city of Detroit don't live in the city of Detroit. So that impacts a lot of the taxes and the assets, the way people pour into it. Like these are just like that right there becomes so many of the challenges. So wherever resources go becomes such more of a like, how do you look at it? But it also becomes one of those things as we're looking at as I say, like the largest skyrise being remodeled right next to my alma mater, Northwestern. And I even remember like the stories, another Michigan citizen story that had the structures in that apartment building had these large lions heads that were taken out, which clearly is somebody, I assume it's like somewhere in like Italy or Dubai or something, like just chilling in somebody's living room or something. But like the assets that were poured into like the way the architecture, the engineering, the infrastructure of the city of Detroit, it's very specific. And I'm going into my Carlos Neilbach interview because, as he says, this was considered the Paris of America. So like, when he was redesigning the entryway for the Fox Theater, and that was back in the 80s, it's so many signature assets like that made of limestone, marble, woods that are like the highest quality woods, like things that like we just look at it like, okay, that's just deteriorating and we got to get that out of here because we can't upkeep it. But the value are almost like it's like insurmountable because it's certain just assets that are here, even inside these homes that are being demolished or not upkept or sitting in the way, they're standing. There are some very specific materials that went into the building of Detroit in that era of the 40s and 30s that are just specific that you really can't get your hands on. So something to definitely take into account.
Yeah, I think council members are going to have to start thinking. I mean, the current iteration of the council probably won't be around by the time we regain control of Belle Isle, but we're closer now than we ever have been. Every day we inch closer, I guess, technically. What is the city's plan? What is the state's plan when that lease expires? I think is a big question that we're going to have to start thinking about soon. Is the city satisfied with the amount of investment that's come from state oversight? A lot of this money that has been poured in, is maybe would have only been possible, under this kind of arrangement. A lot of it was ARPA money in the last couple of years from the state's share of ARPA money. So that would have left the city with less ARPA money potentially if it would have, had still done those things out of its own kind of ARPA pocket. But in exchange for that, the city's lost a lot of control over kind of the culture of the island. Opening the show, talking about what the island used to be, that is always top of mind for folks when I talk about Belle Isle with them and kind of what it means. People kind of they miss this older era. They don't love having state troopers out there. So I think there's a lot of kind of trade-offs that have come with that, and I don't know. We're gonna have to see what they do.
It does not feel like the old rock in many ways, though I'm still connecting to it. It just has a whole different energy. So that's that is something that I definitely, like I say, like almost let's make it explicit. Anybody that's talking to Detroit is different, and like we're gonna do some partnerships, some legacy Black Detroit will get poured in. So I believe that it will be some discussions where, like, I see not just Belle Isle, but other entities and things like that. Really, coming up, we're gonna be talking more MPSC hearing coming up, which is something else. But Thomaesa, give your take.
Yeah, I mean, I think Malachi hit the nail on the head. I mean, what is the future of Belle Isle, right? What is the city's plan? What is the state's plan? Are they aligned? Are they not in alignment? When the lease is over, is the city going to be prepared to take back on whatever responsibilities they're going to regain once that lease is over? And what do Detroiters want to see? What is the destiny of Belle Isle in the eyes of Detroiters? Do we want to go back to the old rock days? Is it time to bring back those cultural activities that used to take place there, or was that not so great? Was there some bad stuff going on Belle Isle that we might not want to go back to, or was so there's a lot of thoughts and ideas about what could happen to Belle Isle. But one thing that we do know is that Belle Isle is a part of the culture here in Detroit, and we need to make sure that whatever the future of Belle Isle is, that the citizens of the city of Detroit have a say in that. And if we do want to bring it back to some of that old time feeling that it used to have, then what would be wrong with that, right? What is our plan? What does the city want to see done? What do the citizens want to see done? And if the state is no longer going to be a part of all of that, are we going to have the ability that we need to have in order to take on those responsibilities? I think those are the main questions when we think about both the legacy of Belle Isle and the future of Belle Isle.
Definitely. So that is public comment this week, right? So tonight, May 22nd, we will be in full effect. You'll see like a lot of people in red shirts floating around with cameras and stuff. And we suggest, if you're interested in any of these mayoral forums, Northwest Campus at WC3, 6 p.m. You're more than welcome to come. Our friend, one of my big homies, one of my OGs, Karen Dumas, is a big part of this and one of the facilitators and moderators of a mayoral forum of the candidates in the race. It's going to be 2 hours. So if you haven't seen any of the forums, if you want to get interactive, come out. You get a chance to actually get your voice. We're going to have some questions for you, right? So along with Thomaesa, we got Tegan with some questions, but it's going to be some fun. What are you looking for tonight, this evening, even though we record this the day before, so it's like talking in the future, but what are you looking for from like a response from the people in reference to being at a mayoral forum, Thomaesa?
Yeah, so this is going to be so interesting. I'm looking to see who people are leaning towards. I'm looking to see who they feel has the best vision for the city of Detroit, because this is going to be, as we know, a pivotal election. And so we need people who are forward thinking. We need people who have ideas. And so I'm trying to figure out, who do you think has the best vision for Detroit? Who do you think gave the best performance tonight? Who do you think is going to be the person who's going to lead Detroit into the future? Who do you think can interact with all of the different entities, the philanthropic community, the federal government, to interact the best with all those other entities that will be to the benefit of Detroit? So I'm basically just trying to hear their take. I want to know what the people are seeing, what they feel about what they're seeing, and what they feel about the future of Detroit as it relates to these candidates who are vying to run the city.
Definitely. And the person that definitely has had a lot of experience interacting with a lot of the candidates and many more candidates. And we'll be getting to a lot more of the city council candidates right here on Public Comment with Detroit is Different. We own everything. And Bridge Detroit. This is like this connection, the collaboration coming together.
It's like we all own Belle Isle or something.
Yes.
These are the partner organizations here.
Yes, right. It's coming together. Malachi knows a lot of this. Let the people know at the end. And also Detroit Next. You all should be watching Detroit Next. You probably see it across the reels. I know it's easier to pay attention to a minute, but watch the full episode. So when you vote, you're not surprised by what these people's agendas are. What should we be looking for from feedback from the people?
Yeah, well, I mean, you pretty much took all the words out of my mouth. Go to bridgedetroit.com, subscribe to the newsletter that comes out every week that recaps the city council. There's always stuff in there that we don't get the opportunity to talk about, but I still think is worth your time. And then same for Detroit Next. We have long interviews with all of the candidates diving into what do they want to do? What have they done? What is their vision for the city? How are they going to actually make that happen? And I think that's the key thing for people to keep in mind. What have these candidates done to show that they are in a position to implement the promises that they're making? And do they have a realistic plan to carry that through? We're hearing a lot of kind of the same things when it comes to identifying the biggest problems of the city, building up the neighborhoods and all of that good stuff. But who actually has the plan that can, make it happen? I think that's still the big question that is unanswered. And these forums have been kind of chipping away at giving us a sense of that. But I think we got a long way to go really to understand that. We're going to be up on Mackinac Island next week for the policy conference where all the mayoral candidates will be joining us, and they'll be debating as well. They have not had a debate yet. They've had forums. So I think a debate could really shake things up. Yeah, that's all you need to know.
All right. With that being said, we'll see you next week. Peace. You're watching Public Comment every Thursdays at 8 a.m. The live stream. Detroit is Different and Bridge Detroit. Local politics of Detroit.